Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
Tessa tightened the last bolt. Replacing the water pump on the truck had been a breeze for her. She enjoyed her job as a mechanic even though some days' work was sparse. She heard the telephone and answered it on the third ring. "Bringing one in for you, Tessa," the tow truck driver said as a greeting. "Good timing, Mark," Tessa replied. "I just finished a job. You got a spot inside?" He went on to ask. "Put it in the end stall," Tessa answered. "How far away are you?" "I'm on the other side of Fairgrove. They'll grab something to eat, then I'll be ready when you get here," she explained. After hanging up, Tessa backed the finished truck out of the stall and straightened up the workspace. She was just finishing her lunch when the overhead door opened. It occurred to her she hadn't asked what kind of vehicle was coming in. Tessa glanced at the flatbed of the tow truck and almost stopped breathing. She had to be dreaming. Tessa shook her head and looked again, only to see the same vision. A 1952 Ford Crestline was strapped to the trailer in front of her. The car of her dreams was so close she could touch it. A myriad of colors reflected off the car's deep blue paint as she watched the truck back up. The chrome sparkled in the sun like diamonds. "Did you see this car, Mark? Look at it. Just look," Tessa said as the tow truck driver walked over to her. "Tessa, I brought it here, remember?" Mark reminded her. "You okay, girl?" As the owner of the tow service, Mark saw Tessa often, but he had never seen her like this before. "Do you know how old I was when I saw one of these for the first time? I was 10 and my dad took me to a car show," Tessa explained all in one breath. "That was almost 20 years ago. It's a beauty, Tessa." "For sure," Mark chuckled. "Seeing all those cars was amazing. I went to every show with my dad after that." "I have the paperwork," Mark began. "Did you see the paint on this, Mark? Check out the sheen. Have you ever seen anything better?" Tessa hopped from side to side as she spoke. Mark watched her and laughed at her enthusiasm. She stepped up onto the flatbed to check out the Ford a bit closer. He leaned against the bench and waited for her to finish before unloading it. "Oh my gosh, Mark, look at the interior. Can you imagine how long it must have taken to get it like this?" Mark looked at his watch and decided to give Tessa a few more minutes before he unloaded the car. He had to admit it looked great. Mark felt bad for the owner, though. Car trouble on vacation really sucked. "This is just how I'm going to do mine someday. I'm going to take my time to make it perfect, Mark. This is why I took the job at the bakery. I don't want to be old before I get my dream car," Tessa explained as she jumped off the trailer. "Can I take it off the trailer now?" Mark teased. "What? Oh yeah, go ahead. But you better be super careful, Mark, so you don't hurt this baby." "I think I can do that, Tessa. This isn't the first car I've hauled anywhere," he replied. "I know, but this is a special car, and she deserves to be treated right." Mark laughed as he got into the cab of the truck and positioned the flatbed while the winch did its job. He began to fill Tessa in with the few details he had. "The owner is a teacher on summer break, traveling part of Highway 41, he said. Something he always wanted to do. I dropped him off at Fiona's so he could get a room for the night. You know, she has that big old place ready for travelers all the time." "Good idea, Mark. That'll give me time to check this baby out." "I'm out of here, Tessa," Mark said when he was finished. "Enjoy yourself." Tessa gave a little wave as she went back to admiring the Ford. She found herself envying the owner, curious about the exhaust and the rear end. She laid on the floor to get a closer look. Several minutes later, she was eyeing down the side when the boss walked in. "Nice ride," Cole said with a whistle. "This is my dream car, Cole. Someday I want one just like this." "Isn't she gorgeous?" Tessa asked. "It's a looker, all right." "Mark bring it in?" "Yeah, maybe an hour ago," Tessa said. "So, what's wrong with it?" Cole questioned. "Wrong? She's perfect. Then why is it here?" He chuckled. Her cheeks went pink when she realized what her boss meant. They went over the paperwork and she explained where the owner of the car was staying. "I'm sure we'll hear from him quite soon. Why don't you head home for the day? You can start fresh tomorrow," he said. "Thanks, boss. That sounds great. See you in the morning," Tessa replied. Since Tessa didn't have to work at the bakery, she went to one of her favorite online sites with vehicles for sale and browsed the ads. The prices made her cringe, though, since they were much higher than the amount she had saved. However, she was determined to afford one for herself someday. Early the next morning, Tessa walked into the garage, anxious to check out the Ford. As she had done yesterday, she walked around it again, admiring the sleek lines and looking for the problem. Looking for something? Cole teased. Morning, boss, Tessa replied. I talked to the owner yesterday. He was running her at about 55 when it sputtered on him. Before he could get to a stop, it sputtered again and he lost power. He bought the car a year ago and never had any trouble with it, he explained. Sounds like the fuel pump, but I'll get right on it, she told him. Tessa tried to start the Crestline to hear what happened herself. She determined the car had an electric fuel pump, a common feature on street rods, and it was definitely the problem. She walked into the office to give her boss the information. The Ford was the only job waiting for Tessa. She wandered around the car while Cole called the owner with the news. They would need his permission to order the new part. Tessa heard the boss talking as she stepped back into his office. I've got my best mechanic on it, sir, Cole said into the telephone. After a couple of minutes of silence, the conversation continued. That's not a problem. You won't be disappointed, sir, Cole remarked. I'll call you as soon as I have any information. Tessa waited for the okay to order the fuel pump. She smiled at his nod and went back to the shop phone. One of their regular suppliers should have it in stock for immediate shipment. On its way, boss, Tessa said a bit later. It should be here first thing in the morning. Great, Tessa. Go on home, and if something comes in, I'll call you, Cole offered. It wasn't uncommon for her to have a lapse between jobs. She appreciated the way her boss let her leave when there wasn't any work. The hours at the bakery made her tired enough that she let her housework go. Having the afternoon to catch up would be great. You got it, boss. See you later. Tessa had the laundry and cleaning started when the telephone rang a couple of hours later. Tessa, I just talked to the owner of the 52. He stopped in to check on his car and get the rest of his luggage. Fiona drove him. I think she likes the guy, she heard Cole say. Too bad I was gone. I'd love to meet him, Tessa remarked. A couple of minutes later, she was back to cleaning. She put some dinner on, watched a little television, and went to bed early for a change. In the morning, she woke revitalized, anxious to get to the garage and work on the Crestline. As promised, the fuel pump came first thing. Tessa opened the package and frowned. She was positive she had ordered the electric fuel pump exactly like the one on the car now. The model she held definitely didn't match the part number that she ordered. With a sigh, she went to find Cole, aware he would have to let the owner know of the delay. Close to an hour later, she finally located someone else with the correct model in stock and a promise of quick delivery. One of the hazards of living out where they did was not having parts readily accessible. For travelers, that often meant spending a few days of their vacation stuck. Now, Tessa had nothing to do again for the day. She decided to call the bakery and see if they needed any extra help. One of the regular servers was out with the flu, the manager said, but they hadn't called Tessa since they assumed she was working at the garage. They would be glad to have her fill in as soon as she could get there. After a quick trip home for her uniform, Tessa drove to the small town of Redwood and the Old Mill Bakery. She parked toward the back of the small parking lot and shoved the car door to get it open. After a second push, it flew open and hung at an odd angle. Stupid door, why can't you ever cooperate? She mumbled as she struggled to close it. They say talking to yourself is a sign of old age, an old man, Harold said. What? That you're plumb crazy? Well, I can't argue with either of those, Harold chuckled. Tessa smiled at the old man as he shuffled down the sidewalk to his home. He was one of the few people that actually lived in Redwood. Years ago, it had been a busier place when Highway 41 was the main road across the region. With the new highways, most of the nearby towns like Fairgrove sat abandoned. Yet the bakery kept busy. One of the items served was world famous. Travelers stopped in for a slice of rustic crust pie after reading about it in such places as the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, or Midwest Living, to name a few. When the baker, Joanne, used her grandmother Edna's no-fail pie crust recipe, she never seemed able to make them as beautifully shaped as her grandmother had. They were misshapen, lumpy, and ugly. Instead of taking the time to learn the art of pie crust shaping, Joanne simply began calling her pies rustic crusts and let it go. They were ugly but great tasting, and the name stuck. Now, years later, travelers still stopped in to enjoy the dessert. Today was one of those days where everyone wanted pie. Tessa served customers all afternoon. She kept busy relating the tale for some and assuring others it had really happened exactly that way. Each table received a smile and a friendly greeting, no matter how tired Tessa was or how rude the customers were. With her shift over, Tessa went to the back room, removed her apron, and checked her tips. The amount was much higher than she had ever made before. She grinned as she thought about the Crestline sitting in the garage. Someday she would have one too. Tessa waved to her coworkers as she went out the door. A quick stop at Kohl's to be sure nothing needed her attention there, then home and a shower. Hey, Tessa, you just missed the teacher. He was on his way to the bakery. I'm surprised you didn't see him there, Cole said. Well, there were several people there, Cole. How would I know who he was? Good point, Cole laughed. I got nothing new for you, kid. So, I guess I wait for the fuel pump to get here or whatever else comes up, Tessa replied. She gravitated to the Crestline as she talked and walked around it again. Each time, she noticed some other feature that impressed her. As she got ready to leave, she saw Cole on the telephone and waved goodbye. The evening went by quickly while Tessa made some phone calls and wrote out some checks for bills. Her mind wandered so much she finally gave up and checked the ads again online. An hour later, more determined to own one than ever, she turned the computer off and went to bed. Cole had a couple of small jobs waiting for Tessa when she arrived at work the next morning. Both belonged to locals this time. Several hours later, when both cars were back to running again, Tessa cleaned her hands and picked up the work area. There wasn't a package yet from the supplier, though. Did the fuel pump come? Tessa asked. Not yet, and no call from the supplier either, so maybe soon, Cole answered. If it doesn't come today, we might have a really irritated customer on our hands, Tessa went on. Nothing I can do, Tessa, he said. I'll call him with the update this afternoon. Mark called to say he had another car he was bringing in that needed some minor work. Tessa went about emptying a stall for it away from the Crestline. She didn't want anything near it at all. By the time Mark unloaded the old Plymouth that Harold used, Tessa gave it a complete tune-up to keep it running better. The day was gone. Harold's daughter brought him in right at closing time to get his car. The old man was amazed at the difference in how his car ran. Tessa, girl, you made this old piece of junk sound like new again, Harold told her. Simple enough, Harold. It just needed a complete tune-up. Enjoy your evening and I'm sure I'll see you around the bakery soon, Tessa remarked. He grinned at her as he got into his car and slowly took off for home. She knew he drove so seldom that he never put 1,000 miles on it in a year. Even so, it gave him a sense of independence. After she cleaned up her work area, Tessa went to find Cole and to find out what happened with the delivery of the fuel pump. Tessa, the fuel pump was sent out east by mistake. The company tracked it and discovered the error about an hour ago. I called the customer and he's on his way now, Cole said. You want me to stay, boss? Tessa asked. No need. Go on home and enjoy your weekend, he replied. On Saturday, Tessa was covering a shift for one of the other girls at the bakery. It gave her 10 hours there, and she knew it would be tough, but the extra money would be great. In the morning, she got ready for her first shift, grabbed a light breakfast, and headed out to work. It was extra busy, so Tessa started rushing, helping table after table empty and fill again for the next 4 hours. When it finally slowed down, Tessa grabbed a cup of coffee and a piece of apple rustic crust pie and relaxed. Just as she sat down, she heard the door open and turned to see who entered. Tessa dropped her fork at the sight of the man striding across the room to a back table. He was gorgeous, with black hair, a trim, lean body, and a smile that lit up the room. She guessed he must be several inches over 6 feet tall. As he glanced around the room, his eyes widened when he saw Tessa. Several seconds passed before he noticed the young girl by his table asking if he wanted coffee. Tessa's heart dropped into her stomach as she continued to observe him. She forgot her pie and coffee and just sat there. What's wrong, girl? Harold asked. You're not getting sick, are you? Hello, Harold. I'm fine, thanks. Just a little tired, Tessa explained. You work too darn much if you ask me. Don't know why you need 2 jobs anyway, he went on. I'm okay, Harold, really. If you ask me, you need to get married, Harold stated. I would, Harold, but you think you're too old for me, she teased with a chuckle. Harold shuffled off to find a table near some of the other locals. As she watched him go, she glanced at the stranger, only to find him staring at her. Tessa blushed as she stood and took her dishes back to the kitchen. One of the girls leaving for the day gave her a brief rundown on the customers in her section. Tessa would now be taking care of the handsome man. As dinner time approached, the bakery got busy again. Tessa stopped at the table where the stranger was. Can I refill your coffee or bring you anything else? Tessa asked. Nathan had only stopped in for coffee after he checked on his car. He was irritated, but it had nothing to do with the garage owner or even his mechanic. From experience, he knew parts for the Crestline never seemed to arrive when promised. Though he bought the car pretty much as it was, he had modified a few things to his own liking. I think I'll try a piece of pie. What's today's special? Nathan said. We have several today, sir. There's apple, cherry, blueberry, make it apple, he decided. I'll take a root beer with that, please. I'll be right back with that, Tessa acknowledged. Nathan watched the server walk away and smiled. She had confidence and class. He wondered why he never found anyone like her back home. Maybe he wouldn't still be single if he did. With a sigh, he sat back and waited for the dessert he wasn't even hungry for, knowing it was just an excuse to sit here longer and watch her. When she returned, he glanced at her hand to see if she wore a wedding band or an engagement ring. He smiled at her and looked at the name tag before he spoke. Tessa is an unusual name for a girl, Nathan remarked. My dad chose it. It's confusing sometimes. At my other job, people assume the name belongs to a male. When they see me, it surprises them, Tessa explained. This isn't your main job? No, this is my second job. I'm a mechanic at Kohl's, Tessa said. I haven't seen you and I've been there a few times this week already, Nathan told her skeptically. Why have you been there? The only thing I have still waiting for parts is you're the teacher. Tessa stood with an incredulous look on her face. This hunk was the teacher that owned the Ford Crestline? Well, yes, I'm a teacher. Nathan Keaton, he introduced himself. Your Crestline is amazing. I mean, the depth in the paint, the chrome, and that interior, it's awesome. Did you look at the motor? That thing must fly. Tessa was so excited she forgot her manners and sat at the table with him. She went on about the features of the Ford until she noticed he was grinning at her. What? Why are you grinning like that? Tessa asked. Do you know how rare it is to find a woman that knows cars? I'm lucky if the ones I know can remember to get the oil changed in their car. Nathan said. I fell in love with cars when I was 10, and my dad took me to a car show. When I saw the street rods, I knew that someday I would save enough money to buy one for myself. That's why I work here too. Nathan looked at the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about street rods. He had no doubt she would save enough to buy her own. So you'll be fixing the Crestline for me. Does that include a test run? Nathan asked. Generally, one of us will test a car out, yes. Why do you ask? So, are you going to be the one taking the Crestline out? He winked as he spoke. Oh my gosh. I didn't even think of that, Tessa admitted. I've been so absorbed in getting her fixed, I never thought about having the chance to drive her. You can test her with one condition, Nathan said. Anything. You name it, she replied. I go along when you take her out. Deal? Tessa agreed. Cole has my number. All you have to do is call me when she's ready and I'll be over. You have no idea how much I've wanted to drive something like her all these years. They talked a few minutes about the Ford before one of the other servers called Tessa for help. I don't have to work tomorrow, so if you get bored, I could maybe take you sightseeing a bit. Here's my number in case, Tessa said as she scribbled her number on her order pad for him. Sounds like a plan to me, Nathan agreed as he tucked the paper into his pocket. I guess it would help if you knew my name, right? I'm Tessa. Yes, that's what your name tag says, Nathan laughed as she blushed. Tessa smiled for the rest of her shift. She thought about getting behind the wheel of the Crestline so much that she forgot orders. Many of the locals teased her for mixing up their meals. She laughed and apologized for being distracted. Soon, it was time for her to leave. After working so many hours, Tessa was tired and went to bed early. In the morning, she jumped out of bed, eager to start the day. She wondered if the handsome teacher would call. In case he did, she dressed with care and added makeup. Her hair was in a simple style, so it didn't require much time. After a light breakfast, Tessa took down a book she had been meaning to read and opened the pages. Half an hour later, the telephone rang, and she was still on page 1. Tessa, this is Nathan Keaton. If you're still willing, I'd like to see some of the area while I'm here. It's a great day for it, Nathan. I can pick you up at Fiona's in about 30 minutes, Tessa told him. I'll be waiting. Tessa grabbed her purse and a lightweight jacket as she headed out the door. It had been a long time since she had been around a man other than the ones she worked with. Nathan was waiting on the front steps when she drove up just under 30 minutes later. Hi, Nathan. All ready to go? I sure am, Tessa. Although, from the looks of your car, it sure would be nice to have the Crestline today, he teased. Are you implying this gem doesn't compare to the Ford? Tessa joked. What am I thinking, anyway? Sightseeing in this baby will be an experience, he clarified with a laugh. It looks pretty bad, but it runs smooth, Nathan. That began the conversation as Tessa took off down Highway 41. She pointed out Fairgrove, a deserted town just down from Redwood. They followed the old highway until Tessa stopped in one of the ghost towns. You can't travel Highway 41 without checking out a ghost town, she stated. They wandered around for a while, talking about the old days, imagining how things were, and laughing. Tessa felt comfortable with Nathan. What made you decide to become a teacher? Tessa asked. One of my teachers in elementary school had a great impact on me. She took extra time for the kids that struggled but never ignored the smarter ones. I wanted to help kids like she did, he explained. I did okay in school, Tessa stated. After the first car show I went to, I knew I wanted to do something with cars. So what made you decide to be a mechanic? There are other professions like auto sales or interior work. My dad did all the repairs on his truck, and I was fascinated by how he could make it run so good all the time. I helped after school, and soon I was doing the work while he watched. Doing anything else never crossed my mind, she explained. Do you ever have customers say anything about a woman repairing their car? Nathan inquired. A few will comment, but after they hear their vehicle run, they take it back, she laughed. This is a beautiful area, Tessa. It's a big change from city life, for sure. I assume you live in Indiana somewhere, since your plate is from there, Tessa stated. Yes, Nathan replied. I live in Bloomington. That's a long way to travel in the Crest Line. Have you taken it on trips before? You're right, it's a long trip, but one I've wanted to do for a long time, he admitted. We're almost back to Redwood. Are you hungry? Tessa asked. We can stop at the bakery. I am hungry, Tessa, Nathan confessed. It sounds great to me. Tessa talked about the area a bit more as she drove the last few miles to the bakery. When she pulled into the parking lot, she saw Harold grinning and waving. You have an admirer, Tessa, Nathan teased. Harold is a sweet man. His wife died a few years ago, and since then he comes here quite a bit. I think he enjoys the companionship more than the food, Tessa said as she shut off the car. Several people greeted Tessa as they walked inside. Nathan noticed how she made sure to reply to each of them. She smiled as she spoke and truly paid attention to them all. Several of the women he dated before were selfish, often short with others, a trait Tessa certainly didn't share. This looks like a good table, Nathan. It'll give us a bit of privacy unless it gets busier. I'm glad you agreed to stopping. I just heard my stomach growl. One of the young girls working came over and took their order. She eyed Nathan and gave Tessa a questioning look as she walked away. It amused Nathan how Tessa seemed to take everything in stride. She was always laughing or smiling when he saw her. She appealed to him in several ways. I wonder why I never meet any women like you back home, Nathan hinted. Looking in the wrong places? Tessa chuckled. Nathan raised an eyebrow and pretended to think. I've checked the mall, the grocery store, even the gym, no one like you in any of them, he replied. They laughed and talked about Nathan's trip on Highway 41. Tessa had never gone far on the famous road. She wanted Nathan to describe everything he saw along the way. The only way to get the feel of Highway 41 is to travel it, he told her. Someday when I have my own hot rod, then I'll drive some of it, Tessa stated. Their lunch came and Tessa dug in. Nathan noted that she didn't pick at her food. It always irritated him to see women take a couple bites, then push their plates away. Tessa enjoyed her meal, yet she had good manners. Nathan was finding that he liked several things about her. Tessa, girl, I think this is the one, Harold said as he went past their table. Nathan saw the pink creep into Tessa's cheeks as she looked up. When she saw him watching her, she turned her head away, the pink changing to red. It was the first time Nathan had seen Tessa uncomfortable. The silence was broken when the server asked if they wanted dessert. It's up to you, Tessa. I have all evening to do nothing, and I know the pie is scrumptious here, Nathan remarked. Is there any of the blueberry left? Tessa questioned the young girl. 2 slices left, Tessa, she answered. Sounds good to me, Nathan replied. Bring them over, Tessa said. I love the blueberry the best. Talk went back to general topics as they enjoyed the rustic crust pie. Tessa shared a bit more of the story behind the name for the pies. When they finished, Tessa offered to pay her share of the tab. My treat, Tessa, since you used your day off to give me a tour of the area, Nathan told her. I enjoyed it, Nathan, she commented. The drive to Fiona's was short, and soon, Nathan was getting out of the car. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Tessa, when I check on the Crest Line, he said as he opened the car door. As soon as the fuel pump is delivered, I'll get right on your car, Nathan. Tessa waved as Nathan walked towards Fiona's front door. Already, she missed having Nathan with her. As she drove home, Tessa wondered why, when she finally met someone that interested her, he lived so far away. She often dreamed of her wedding. Never did she think she would still be single by the time she hit 30. Her smile faded as she thought about going home alone once more. The night was long and Tessa slept little. She tried to get comfortable as she turned from side to side. When the alarm rang, she slowly got up to start her day. Once in the shower, Tessa shook off the gloominess and drowsiness enough to feel normal again. After a bit of breakfast, she left for work at Cole's. Morning, Cole greeted her. You look tired. Hey, Cole. I didn't sleep very good last night. Knowing you spent all day working on something yesterday instead of relaxing, Cole said. No, I took Nathan sightseeing, she answered. Nathan? Do I know him? The owner of the Crestline, she clarified. It fascinated Cole to hear the tidbit of news. He didn't realize the two had met, and though Tessa was friendly, spending the day with a complete stranger surprised him. He smiled when Tessa blushed. I see. He was in the bakery Saturday, and well, he's a nice guy, Tessa managed to get out. So you just offered to take a stranger for a tour of the area? It was incredulous to Cole how fast Tessa trusted the teacher. Nathan was polite and seemed quite nice each time he talked to Cole. The two of them talking was slightly different from Tessa inviting him out for the day. Cole felt protective over Tessa since her parents were both gone. Cole, we talked for a long time in the bakery first. He's a teacher, not a murderer, so calm down. We went through some of the ghost towns, stopped at the Old Mill Bakery for lunch, then I dropped him off at Fiona's, Tessa explained. He had better have been a gentleman, Cole went on. All day, Cole. He was very respectful and interesting. We got along great. I enjoyed myself, she admitted. You know I'm just concerned, Cole told her. I worry about you. No need to worry. We had a good time, a nice meal, and nothing more, Tessa explained. All right then, I won't worry, Cole said as he dropped the topic. The part is here for the Crestline already. Did you check if it's the right one this time? She asked. It's the electric fuel pump we need. I matched it to the one here before I signed for it, Cole said. Then I better get to work right away. Tessa went over to the tool chest and unlocked it. When she had everything set up, she went to work on connecting the pump and Cole turned back to his office. The morning slipped away as they each completed their respective work. When Cole walked back to check on her later, she had just closed the hood, ready to test the pump. Great timing, Cole. You're clean, so you can get in and start her, Tessa told him. Sounds like a good idea to me, he grinned. A few minutes later, when he had familiarized himself a bit with the gauges, they heard the Ford start. Tessa loved the deep rumble it made and smiled. The deal she made with Nathan to test drive it came back to her. You have to call him, Cole. Right now, she demanded as he stepped out of the Ford. Aren't you going to test it out? He asked. Nathan said I could take it for a test run, but he's going along, she stated. Then I'll call him later after you finish that truck over there, Cole teased. Cole, you have to call him now, Tessa implored. Please, Cole, you have to. He laughed at the anxious look on her face and turned to the office without replying. He laughed again as he heard her stamp her boot in frustration. Something more was developing here between his mechanic and the teacher. It was very interesting indeed. Nathan answered right away when Cole called. As soon as Fiona could bring him there, Nathan would be by to check out the Ford. Cole told him what time the shop closed, so he was sure to get there in time. After he hung up, Cole wandered out into the bay Tessa was in and gave her the update. Less than an hour later, Nathan walked into the shop. Hello, Cole, Nathan greeted as he scanned the shop for Tessa. Thanks for coming in, Nathan. I hear you're going along on the test drive? Cole inquired. That's the deal, yes. Is there a problem with that? The only problem is if you hurt Tessa, Cole warned. That won't happen. I like her a lot, Nathan began, but the distance between where we live makes anything more impossible. You know where I stand, Cole's unspoken threat came through loud and clear to Nathan. Somehow, knowing Tessa had a protector in Cole made him feel good. He reached out to shake hands with the shop owner just as Tessa joined them. Are you ready? Tessa asked without hesitation. I should ask if you are, but I think, from the excitement glowing in your eyes, I know the answer, Nathan teased. They walked to the Ford, laughing. Cole observed the interaction between them. Satisfied, Nathan understood his stance on Tessa. He went back to his office, a small smile on his face. The overhead door slid open as the Ford roared to life. Tessa was extra careful as she drove the exquisite car through town. Nathan saw how she went around every hole or dip in the road and grinned. Head up to the interstate and open her up, he told her. Are you serious? Tessa replied. You'll let me do that? I want you to, Tessa, he grinned. Tessa felt the exhilaration of speeding up as she took the ramp onto the highway. A few minutes later, traffic was light since it was the middle of the day and she merged without a problem. Tessa drove a bit under the speed limit. Come on, Tessa, you know you want to see how she responds when you kick her down, Nathan goaded. More than you know, Nathan, she admitted. Do it, he declared. With a quick glance his way, Tessa checked the traffic near her, laughed, and opened up the Ford. She felt alive and free as they shot past the other cars. The car responded like a dream. Tessa was in love all over again with hot rods. After a few minutes, she backed down to the speed limit, not wanting a ticket at the speed she had just gone. Nathan stared at her, her inner beauty electrifying, matching the seductive allure of her appearance. That was awesome, Tessa confessed. She's amazing, Nathan agreed. Yes. Amazing, he murmured as he looked at Tessa. Tessa didn't catch the heated look in Nathan's eyes as he watched her. He wondered if she handled a lover with the same intensity and care as she did the Ford. Once again, he regretted living so far away that he couldn't pursue getting to know her better. Lost in his own thoughts, Nathan didn't realize they were back at the garage until he heard Tessa shut off the motor. That was so awesome, Nathan, Tessa began. I'll never forget driving this beauty. You're welcome, Tessa. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Cole met them at the door. He needed to be sure Tessa was okay. She wouldn't like it if she knew he worried as much as he did about her. How did it go? Cole asked. She runs like a dream. Nathan even let me open her up out on the highway, she replied. Great. I'll go get the final bill for you, Nathan, and you can get back to your vacation, Cole said. I'd like to check out a couple more states before I have to head home. More than likely, I'll take a different route home so I can see more areas. Nathan went inside with Cole to settle his bill. Tessa was still standing by the Ford when he returned. Keep saving for it, Tessa. If you want it bad enough, you'll get it. I will. Driving yours was an experience I will never forget. It was a pleasure meeting you, Nathan. Enjoy the rest of your trip, Tessa replied. Of all the places for the car to break down, I'm glad it was here, Nathan added. You're a great mechanic, Tessa, and a beautiful woman as well. Tessa blushed at the compliments as Nathan got into his car. She felt a moment of sadness that he was leaving. When he started the car, she smiled, backed away, and gave a small wave. Several minutes after the car disappeared from sight, Tessa still stood in the same spot, a sad look on her face. You standing there all day or coming back to work? Cole called out to her. I'm coming. Relax, Tessa said as she finally moved. The day went slowly for Tessa. She struggled to find the enthusiasm for her job that was present so often. When it was time to leave, she cleaned up, nodded to Cole, and left. Dinner was a sandwich that went untouched. When nothing held her interest on television or even car sites on the computer, Tessa went to bed early. Images of Nathan smiling at her as he stood next to the '52 Ford flickered through her dreams. In the morning, Tessa had to admit to herself that she was attracted to Nathan. When she got to work, Cole had another job for her, so her day was busy. Tessa took time for a quick lunch and went right back to work. When Cole called out to tell her there was a call for her, she had just finished a job. It wasn't unusual for customers from the area to talk to her about their repairs. This is Tessa. Do you think I can talk you into dinner tomorrow night? Tessa was shocked to hear his voice. She grinned and turned away from the office and a curious Cole. How many others call and ask you to dinner? Nathan wondered. Just Harold, she teased. Oh, so I have competition. I'll remember that. Now, are you free tomorrow night? Nathan repeated. Where are you? I thought you were going several hundred miles away. Tessa ignored his question in her excitement. Tessa, just answer my question. Yes, Nathan. I'd love to. What time will you be here? I'll be there mid-afternoon and explain everything then, he told her. Tessa gave him her address and directions before they said goodbye. She turned back to the shop and saw Cole standing outside his office with a grin. Why didn't you tell me it was Nathan? He asked me not to, Cole replied. Cole didn't mention that he had talked to Nathan first. He was concerned with the distance between where the two lived. It was obvious Tessa had feelings for the teacher. That night, Tessa went through her closet to find something feminine to wear. Nathan had only seen her in jeans or her uniform, and she wanted to look good for him. It had been a long time since she had been nervous over a date. Satisfied with the clothes she chose, Tessa ate some dinner, then looked online at hot rods for sale. After a futile search for a deal, she went to bed. At work the next day, Tessa asked Cole if she could leave early to get ready for her date. Nodding his permission, she dug into the truck waiting for repair. By noon, she had it running again, cleaned up her workbay, and went to find Cole. "The truck is done, Cole, but there isn't anything else. I'm knocking off now if it's all right with you," she told him. "Go ahead, Tessa. Enjoy your date and tell Nathan hello for me." Tessa ran out to her car and took off for home. Though she had several hours before Nathan would be there, she panicked as the minutes ticked away. After her shower, Tessa applied a layer of lotion over her freshly shaved legs and then did her nails. The rose-colored polish went with the sleeveless dress she had chosen. It had a matching waist-length jacket in case the evening was chilly. She loved how the silky material felt on her skin. When the polish was dry, it was time to do her hair. Though Tessa wore it short, tonight she used some hair wax to give it body and shape. Satisfied with the outcome, she went to her bedroom, slipped into the dress, and added a pair of stiletto sandals to complete the look. It had been so long since she dressed in anything other than work clothes or jeans that she almost didn't recognize herself in the full-length mirror. The doorbell rang, interrupting her perusal. It occurred to her she might be overdressed, until she opened the door and saw Nathan. He wore a dove-gray silk shirt with charcoal dress slacks. Tessa felt her heart skip a beat from the look he gave her. "You are absolutely gorgeous, Tessa," he told her. "Thank you, Nathan. It's been a long time since I dressed up this way," she admitted. "It's probably a good thing. If the guys around here saw you like this, they wouldn't leave you alone, and I wouldn't stand a chance," Nathan remarked. "I doubt that. Let me get my bag and I'm all set to go." Nathan took in the way the dress hugged Tessa's body. It stopped just above her knees, showing off her long, shapely legs. When she reached for her jacket and purse, it revealed strong, toned thighs. Nathan swallowed and tried not to stare. He wondered what she would do if he walked over to her and placed his hand on her skin. "All set," Tessa said as she turned. Nathan didn't respond. Tessa looked to be sure nothing was out of place with her clothing and tried again. "Nathan, are you all right?" Nathan shook his head as he spoke. "I asked if you were all right." "You had an odd look on your face," Tessa repeated. "You take my breath away, Tessa. Do you have any idea how much I want to touch you right now?" Nathan took a step closer while he talked to her. Tessa gasped and looked into his eyes. Desire poured from them as he leaned down and placed his lips on hers. The kiss was soft, gentle, and left Tessa wanting more. Without thinking, she ran her tongue over his lips, needing to taste him. Nathan waited a couple of seconds before he pulled her closer and opened his mouth. When he felt close to losing control, Nathan backed away and tried to think. All he wanted to do was undress this exquisite creature in front of him. Yet he knew it was too soon. He was sure she would let him continue if he tried. However, having her for one night wasn't why he had returned. He wanted a chance to learn everything about Tessa. How it would work, living in another state, he wasn't sure. He only knew he wanted more. "I shouldn't have," Nathan began. "Too forward?" Tessa asked at the same time. "Tessa, no, you weren't too forward. I didn't intend to do that tonight. But it's okay, Nathan. I wanted you to," Tessa replied. "Let's go to dinner." "I promise to behave," he told her as he took her hand. Nathan helped her into the Ford and groaned when her dress slid halfway up her thighs. He closed her door and took some deep breaths to calm down before he got in the car with her. During the drive to the restaurant, Nathan told Tessa about the places he had driven through after he left the shop. Somewhere during the first day, he realized he wasn't paying attention to the scenery or enjoying the trip. Sitting in a small restaurant eating a dry piece of pie, he admitted he was bored. "What changed the trip for you?" Tessa asked. "I kept seeing you driving the Ford. Every time I saw something of interest, it made me think of you and the day you took me sightseeing," Nathan told her softly. A single tear glistened in the corner of Tessa's eye as she listened to Nathan. She didn't know how to justify the feelings that were building for this man. The distance between them made it impossible to have a relationship. Yet somehow she couldn't dismiss them either. "I'm so glad you came back," Tessa admitted. They continued to talk during dinner. Neither seemed aware of their surroundings as they shared and laughed together. When their meal was over, Nathan held Tessa's chair, reached for her hand, and walked out to the Ford. "Do you want to drive?" Nathan asked as they approached the car. "Are you serious? You'd let me again?" Excitement bubbled over as she stood next to the car. Never did she think she would get the chance to drive this beauty again. "If you don't want to," Nathan teased. I want to, Tessa grinned. Nathan held the door for her as she got behind the wheel. When Tessa saw that her heels would be a problem, she reached down, slowly removed each one, and sat back with a sigh. Much better, she chuckled. Nathan stared at the amount of thigh her dress had exposed. He swallowed and attempted to make sense of what she had just said. Tessa hadn't noticed how far the dress had crept up as she started the car. With a gleeful laugh, she backed out of the parking space and carefully drove towards home. "Nathan, you're pretty quiet," Tessa commented. "I must be tired. All the driving the last couple of days," Nathan improvised. They talked for the remainder of the drive to her home. Nathan told her some of the funny things his students said in class. Soon, she pulled up into her driveway and turned off the Ford. "I had a great time, Nathan," Tessa said. "Can I call you tomorrow?" Nathan asked. "Before I leave for home?" Tessa had such mixed feelings. It was a struggle to think. In a sense, she wanted Nathan to go inside with her and not leave. Yet the cautious side told her there wasn't a future for them. "I'd like that. Thank you for dinner," Tessa replied. "You're welcome. I'll talk to you tomorrow then," Nathan told her as they got out of the car. "Nathan?" "Yes, Tessa?" The light kiss he placed on her lips made them tingle. Tessa could feel the restraint in Nathan as he leaned forward and held her close. "Go inside, Tessa, before I make what's in my head reality." "Good night, Nathan," she whispered. Nathan watched her disappear into the house and waited for the lights to come on. He let out his breath and shook off the cloud of passion that fogged his head. The drive to Fiona's didn't take long, and soon, Nathan made his way up the stairs to his room. Neither Tessa nor Nathan slept much. They were daydreaming and wondering, what if? Tessa skipped breakfast and went into work. Nathan wandered outside and tried to think. To both, the day crept by even as it sped past. Unsettled, Nathan called Tessa at the garage just to hear her voice. They decided on a time for him to pick her up for a quick dinner at the Old Mill Bakery. Tessa was ready when Nathan drove up, and she ran out to the car. She waved and jumped into the car before he had time to get out. The bakery was busy when they arrived. Tessa spotted a table in the corner and nodded to Nathan to follow her. Dinner was simple compared to the previous evening. Conversation included many of the locals that stopped by their table for a quick hello. Nathan watched Tessa and knew that he wanted a chance to learn more about her. It wouldn't be easy, but if she wanted it as much as he did, they could find a way to overcome the distance. Back at her home, Tessa invited Nathan in, unsure of what she really wanted. He declined but asked her to join him on the small porch instead. "Tessa, I'm going home tomorrow," Nathan stated. "I wish you lived here, Nathan. It would be so simple then." "It isn't that simple. Can I at least call you when I get back home?" he asked. "I'd like that. I hope you have a safe trip, Nathan." Tessa felt the tears gathering in her eyes and turned away. She was embarrassed and didn't want Nathan to notice them. "I wish things were different, Tessa. It wouldn't be fair of me to take advantage of you tonight and leave in the morning," Nathan explained. He stood and pulled her up in front of him. For several minutes, he just held her close until he felt his control slipping. With a quick kiss to her forehead, he smiled, wiped her tears, and walked away. Tessa heard the sound of the Ford as Nathan left and let the tears roll down her cheeks. In such a short time, Nathan had come to mean a great deal to her, and it hurt to have him go. After a day of work at the garage with nothing going right, Tessa got home late. She hit the button on the answering machine and heard Nathan's voice. Cole had needed her to finish installing an alternator. By doing so, she had missed Nathan's call. The evening crept by, but he didn't call back. The next day was a repeat of the previous one. Jobs that should have been easy for Tessa took hours to do. She hit her head on a hood and scraped her knuckles on an engine block. At the end of the day, her temper was short, and her mood took a nosedive. She rushed home to see the answering machine had no new messages. This was the trend for several days. Tessa began to think Nathan had forgotten all about her. Cole kept out of her way and assigned her easier jobs. He worried that Nathan had taken advantage of her. Yet he hadn't seemed the type for that. About 10 minutes before closing time on a Friday, there was a call from Mark, the tow truck driver. "Bringing one in for you, Tessa," Mark said as a greeting. "All right, Mark. You got a spot inside?" "Put it in the end stall," Tessa answered. "How far away are you?" "About 15 minutes, Mark replied. "They'll stick around then," Tessa stated. The bay was ready, so Tessa got something cold to drink and waited. She wanted to go home and curl up on the sofa for the night. Instead, here she was stuck at the garage. A few minutes later, the overhead door opened, and she heard the beeping of the tow truck backing up to it. Tessa forced herself to get up and go take care of the paperwork she knew Mark would have for her. She had to be dreaming. Tessa shook her head and looked again, only to see the same vision. A 1952 Ford Crestline was strapped to the trailer in front of her. Not just any Crestline, though. It was Nathan's Crestline. The door of the tow truck slammed shut as she just stared at the car. "Hello, Tessa." "Nathan," she managed to get out. "She isn't running so well, Tessa. I think there's something seriously wrong with her," Nathan commented as he walked up to her. I don't understand," Tessa stuttered. "Simple, really. Only you can fix her," Nathan said. "Nathan, She tried to form a sentence, but her voice drifted off. "I quit my job last week." The words startled Tessa. "Why would you?" "I see you're having trouble speaking, Tessa. So how about if you listen a minute?" Nathan chuckled. "Okay," she agreed. "Driving away from here was a mistake. I wanted you, Tessa. And leaving here didn't change that," he explained. "Nothing was right anymore after you left." Tessa got out. "I've checked around, and I think I can find a teaching job for the next year. Distance won't be a problem again." "Nathan?" "Yes." "Tessa? Shut up and give me a kiss," she demanded. Nathan wrapped his arms around her and knew he had indeed made the right decision. Highway 41 held many treasures, but none more precious than Tessa. And that's Tessa and Nathan's story. A journey of love, dreams, and second chances. Would you take the risk for love? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.